Hi everyone, I'm Nicolai Tangen, the CEO of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, and today I'm here with Robert Gentz, who is visiting us in Oslo, and Robert is the co-founder and co-CEO of Zalando, which is, of course, as you know, all of you, Europe's leading online fashion platform. Robert started Zalando in 2008, right as the financial crisis hit, and most people thought that selling shoes online was a terrible idea. But now, 17 years later, Zalando serves more than 50 million customers across 25 European markets. We own a lot of shares in this company, and it's really exciting to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me and having me.
And of course, since you own the biggest kind of fashion thing in the world, what do you wear today?
I'm very, very dark today, yeah? So everything that I wear I actually got from Zalando today. So
it's a bit like Steve Jobs, like your sweater, no?
I mean, today actually I felt like in Norway you kind of have to dress a little bit warmer.
Good idea. Now, Rob, let's go back to the start. You founded Zalando in 2008, just as the financial crisis was kind of hitting the world. So tell me about the very start.
Before we started Zalando, like me and my co-founder David, we actually started like a social media company in Latin America. So, which was like student network for in Mexico, Argentina, and Chile, and this was like a startup that didn't really work out. So, and then we said, okay, well, that shouldn't be it. So we actually wanted to actually try it one more time, and we came back to Europe and thought, okay, well, in e-commerce with soft goods, there's actually a very great opportunity here in Europe. And we looked into various categories and fashion and really found the shoes quite interesting. And in June 2008, we started to sell flip-flops on a domain called fliptops.de, and really worked out well. So we actually saw like consumers really liked it. It really picked up like to whatever, like 20 flip-flops a day. And I think based on this insight, we got now investment into for like a big idea selling shoes online with Zalando, and then we got started.
20 flip-flops a day. Were you were packing them yourselves and sending them out, or?
Yeah. We packed them ourselves. We went to the post office and really enjoyed every single customer contact we had and every single conversation, and just and as well asked, like, why did they actually go for an online search for flip-flops and why didn't they go to stores? And it was a very, very good insight. So that was mid 2008, right before the financial crisis.
But e-commerce was quite new at that stage, right?
Yeah, it was very new. And I think that as well was for us a very good insight, that whenever we talk with people about e-commerce and with shoes, we got a lot of feedback from people. You cannot really order shoes, you have to try them on. This is more bricks and mortar experience. But then we actually saw, like in the internet, like in Google, like how many people actually searched for specific shoes and specific sizes. And they made it very clear that there's a big market, although it was not a market for 90% of people, but it was actually a market for a few percentage of people.
Zappos in the US had done something, well, I guess slightly similar. Was that an inspiration for you?
It was like selling shoes online, yeah. So I think it was not the most innovative idea, though. But I think like what Zappos in the US proved is that with shoes in e-commerce, you can actually build up a big company. That helped actually to raise then some money in July 2008, where they got 100,000 euros of investment. And then the financial crisis hit, and then we said, okay, well, now we better get this going and survive. And that actually was, I think in retrospect, this was actually very good thing for us, because it really produced as well a lot of character that I think we still until today actually nurture from.
The fact that you got the crisis straight in your face, you think was a good thing?
Yeah, I remember like with my co-founder that we were debating endlessly, for example, for half a day if we should buy. I still remember like this book of the German retail with shoes, so which gave us a lot of kind of market data about the German shoe retail. And it cost like 60 euro at the time, and we really were debating, do we really need to spend the 60 euro? Today we have more than 60 million customers, we have like thousands of employees, but we still tell these stories of frugality, of like every single euro and every single resource really counts and treat it as if it's your own money. Do you really have to spend it? And I think this produced a lot of character that we still benefit from today.
When did you realize that there was potential beyond the shoe category?
The scaling of Zalando then actually happened extremely fast. So we went from, in 2009, we had probably like 5 million revenues, 6 million revenues. Then we went to 150 in the next year. Then more than 500 million.
Wow.
And then more than 1.2 billion in the fourth year.
Wow.
So we literally went from 50 people in 2009 to 2011. We were like more than 2,500 employees. So the scaling actually went very fast, because then we realized that we have this flywheel going for us. Yeah? So where we started off with shoes, and then we understood, the more you provide selection, actually, the better you could actually convert the traffic. So the better you could create the experience for customers. So we really had to just, scale selection, and then actually we were able to actually convert the traffic in a good way. And then we asked ourselves, is this actually not only shoes, but as well fashion? Yeah? And can we actually cross-sell fashion? What we then started to do. And then we asked ourselves, is this actually not only Germany, is this actually a European proposition? And then we went into first market and realized that we could actually bring the same selection that we had now in Germany, like to a smaller market that actually was very much appreciated. And then we actually scaled across Europe. And that was a very, very fast scaling in these first years.
Yeah, much faster than we normally see in Europe, right? That kind of blitz scaling, sometimes you see it with the new technologies and so on, but very rare. So what decides the speed at the start of your launch? How do you get to these growth numbers?
I think when it's very clear of how your flywheel works, so I think then I think it's very incredibly easy for leadership to actually align under this framework of how you actually grow. Yeah? So and for us,
explain flywheel for the people who don't know it.
We started off with an Adidas shoe. So people actually in the internet searched Adidas, Samba, like a specific shoe size, let's call it like 46, like a bigger shoe size than you usually should get actually in the store. Yeah? So they had very specific searches. Yeah? And to convert such a search in a sale, you just need to have this shoe. Yeah? But there's not that many people that search for this shoe. So more people actually search for Adidas Samba, which is then the model name. And even more people then search for Adidas shoes or for the brand name Adidas. Yeah? But the brand name Adidas, you cannot really convert until you really have like a good selection of Adidas in place. Yeah? So, and for us, that actually meant because we had to scale inventory, we actually started like very specifically to scale around shoe searches in the first couple of months. Yeah? And we knew that the more you build up selection, the more you can actually convert the traffic. Yeah? And then you can actually go from within a brand to the entire brand, then to more brands, and then you have the entire Germany, and then you can replicate the same for the next country. And all of a sudden, you then have like a selection that brings the same amount of selection, no matter if you live here in the north of Norway, or if you live in the south of Italy, or if you live close to the high street of Paris. And you have the same access to selection. And I think that was very much, the journey of the flywheel of how we built up a selection and actually could grow and grow and grow in this environment in a good way.
But you are expanding in a lot of different dimensions at the same time. So you're expanding in categories, in brands, and in geographies. How do you think about that, expanding in so many different ways at the same time?
The way of how we think about it is we have people that we form a relationship with. These are our customers. And we have more than 60 million, more than 15% of the European population that has an active customer relationship with us. And we nurture these relationships with our customers. We try to, we invest a lot in terms of our experience to never disappoint, to always deliver in a way that actually exceeds the expectations. And then it's a question like how we can use these customer relationships to actually do more for them. Yeah. So and like we started out with shoes, went into fashion. Recently went as well into sports, into beauty, into families and kids. So into all aspects, I think where we actually have can actually play like a bigger role for our customers. Huh? So we build relationships and then we grow our role for them in a bigger way. And today it's about €300 on average they spend with us. And our ambition is obviously to grow the the role in different categories that we play with.
How did you decide which countries to roll out?
We're only in Europe, yeah? The big reason for only Europe is because Europe is actually so beautifully complex, yeah? And we made Europe very easy for brands to interact with due to our kind of logistical footprint. Yeah? So where we can actually build like a big logistical network throughout Europe that can serve customers as well in the north of Norway and to south of Sicily. So, and within Europe, we actually have the benefit of this network outside of Europe.
So if you have a brand, instead of building out all these facilities yourself, you basically just let you do it.
Yeah, this is, what we have recently done now with our B2B service, that we as well enable brands through our B2B services to use our entire logistical network as well for their own e-commerce and as well outside of Zalando, which is the B2B vector that we have recently launched like last year.
Tell me about this. So what do you do for the clients? So this is you basically supply the whole ecosystem, right, for e-commerce?
Exactly. So we have a B2C company that's kind of how we grew up with, and recently we have as well launched a B2B vector for us, where we basically productize the logistical infrastructure and service that we've built, and as well software, and regard actually the 7,000 brands that we offer that we work with as customers of our infrastructure, and they can use the same infrastructure that we built for ourselves now to actually run the entire e-commerce on. Yeah? So that they that kind of has all these localization features throughout Europe, and that they can actually send product through like for their own e-commerce, or as well connect to different marketplaces and only run the entire inventory from one infrastructure, which is a very, very good use for the brands, because they don't have to invest into own capex of logistics, and they get as well the benefits from the entire network that we have for ourselves.
So if I'm the client and I buy something directly from a company, you basically provide the whole backbone and do the delivery.
Exactly. So,
and I still think I deal just with that company. Or do I know that you guys are involved?
Yeah, a good example is Snacks, that's actually committed their European, their continental European fulfillment on Zalando. So all the fulfillment for Next within Europe is actually done through our logistical footprint.
So Rob, you collect a lot of data, right? You know more about what's selling in Europe than any other firm, right? How do you use all this data?
Yeah, so you're right. With 60 million people that actually shop with us on a yearly basis, and many more, obviously, visitors that we actually have that actually use our destination. There's a lot of great data that we generate on behalf of consumers. For example, what we do here is that we use the data graphs from consumers and as well from merchandise to help consumers to actually find better sizes for themselves, or find the sizes that have a higher probability to fit them. So, if you actually order something on Zalando and you have like a history with Zalando, and you sometimes return items, you give feedback on items, sometimes you don't return on items, then we see as well similar customers that have similar kind of history as you have. And when you look at another item that you have not yet bought, we can give you more accurately advices about how to, which size to order, because sometimes these brands run a bit smaller, sometimes they run a bit bigger, which we can actually build out of this knowledge graph on sizes.
If I go on Zalando and I try to buy a medium shirt, you're going to say, Nicolai, you must be joking. You should have XL.
That can happen sometimes. But sometimes as well these brands have different size profiles. So it can as well be sometimes that you say, okay, well, in this brand you might actually be an S, yeah? So it can as well happen.
Right.
But these are like good data points. But then there's another kind of very interesting data challenge which actually comes in logistics. How do you actually optimize logistics in a right way? So where in this like network of logistics centers that we run across Europe, where like an item should be put in this network that has the highest probability in terms of speed, but as well in terms of cost, where it might actually be purchased, is where there's a lot of math and data that actually really helps to optimize this network, as well on behalf of the entire industry, because we work with 7,000 brands, we run a very, very big network, and there's a lot of inefficiencies which can be calculated away by producing the right algorithms and the right data graphs.
What are the most important ways that AI is changing the way you run your business now?
I mean, it has a few of components about how we actually interact with consumers. Yeah? We, for example, recently launched like a discovery feed, yeah? So which is a great way of how can actually consumers can interact with fashion beyond actually the only buying, but as well in terms of their discovery and their inspiration, entertainment. So we surface from a huge pool of content, those items of content that consumers might be the most interested in, yeah? Which gives them a great gateway towards finding or getting inspired, or as well having fun with fashion lifestyle. So that's an interesting new project that we have launched on our mission to inspiration and entertainment with consumers. A second kind of bigger initiative of ours is an assistant that we have built, which actually enables consumers to interact with us in natural language. Yeah? So we can actually ask us much more occasion-based questions. So I don't know, like I'm showing up here in Norway, and what shall I wear today in Norway, which is something that e-commerce previously couldn't really answer. So, but now with all these advanced large language models and as well in our own advancements, we are able to cope with these questions and answer these questions in a good way. So that's
so the model told you, okay, you're going to Norway, it's such a depressing country, you need to wear black.
Yeah, it could be.
What about sizes? How is technology going to help people choose the size?
The size and fit is as well really like one of the most interesting and complex questions in fashion. And here, AI actually helps quite a lot to actually solve these questions. So
can I take a picture of myself and get the size?
Yeah. So exactly. So you can take a picture of yourself at Zalando. Where we, which actually 1 million customers already have done. So you take a picture of yourself with using the Zalando app, and we render you the sizes from your body, and this increases our probability to predict the right size for you. But it's two-sided problems. It's a consumer, it's a body size, but as well like the merchandise measurement size, which is another question. But I think in the future there will be as well experiences where you, for a certain part of the assortment, we would have like close to 100% of confidence that we can predict the right size for you, where you might have detailed pages where you don't have to select any more size. We do the size selection actually for you, and we're very confident in that whatever we will send you will actually fit you. So that's the consumer side. Huh?
Tell me about the how you work with returns, which is a very big cost in your industry.
Nobody really likes returns. Yeah, no, not the consumers don't like returns. We don't like returns. The environment doesn't like returns. So it's nothing that anyone likes. So consumers don't really like to go to the postal office and just deliver returns again. It is something that we work on to help consumers to take better choices. Yeah? And the big driver of returns is obviously that an item actually doesn't arrive in the way of how the consumers imagine it to be. So it be it like in terms of sizes, how it fits, or be it in the way of how it was visually imagined when you actually ordered. Yeah? And there's actually going a lot of investments from our side into helping consumers to take better choices here. So on the size and fit, we already discussed a little bit like what we do there. But even like on the product presentation, so there is actually innovation happening where this problem might be better solved in the future. So for example, we're now able to render from 2-dimensional pictures like 3-dimensional experiences or like videos that actually help consumers to really like in depth actually try to imagine this item on the detail pages in a way that wasn't possible before.
So if you add all these things together, what do you think are the real key issues that you need to get right as an online retailer?
I think the one key theme is customer obsession. Yeah. So because consumer expectations are constantly rising, and really staying close to the consumer, and really as well staying close to the technology that actually enables you to provide solutions that were not possible before. I think that's one key theme. And the second one is as well like have a very, very good relationship with the brands, because we work with 7,000 brands, and they as well drive their business, and they have a lot of good ideas, and understanding what they really need and how do you as a platform actually cater to them in the right way, and how do you make it as efficient for them as possible to drive their brand equity on Zalando. I think that's the two kind of most important ingredients you have to get right.
You are facing a couple of new ultra low cost competitors, Temu and Shein. How are they changing the landscape for you?
Yeah, I mean, you have these Chinese competitors now, but we're basically in a different game than those companies. I think they are only about price. Like our promise actually to consumers is, or as a platform, is much more in the around quality. So as a consumer, you know that the selection you get on Zalando is these are brands. There's a certain quality filter that we actually apply to it, and we invest a lot into experiences to make it better for consumers, like delivery, speed, reliability, brand presentation, and as well like these innovations as size and fit and product presentation and so on. So that's a promise towards consumers. And the promise towards brands is as well on quality, which is well very important, is that that they don't compete on Zalando with supply chains that are just after copying their styles at a like lower quality and cheaper price, but they actually have an ability to build up their brand on Zalando and tell their story on Zalando and sell their product in the way they want to sell them. So it's a very different kind of game that we play. But these Chinese platforms, you see them in segments of the market that are very, very price sensitive, like young fashion, entry price points. You see them as well in terms of advertising prices, because they're sometimes very aggressive in advertising, so that as well we see that. But I think overall, like our Zalando game is much bigger. So it's as well like not only about fashion, it's about sports, about beauty, about family, kids, and many more kind of lifestyle propositions that we're active in.
Just if you try to look forward, let's say 3 months, what are you seeing in terms of changing purchasing behaviors? Anything going on in society which you think is interesting just now?
We have a very broad view across Europe, and I think sometimes you see like price consciousness. I think a little bit more like in some elements of the market in Germany, like Eastern Europe is actually performing actually quite well, but nothing really extraordinary.
Any particular color for the next season?
What we recently developed, which also has a very nice uptake, is consumer adoption, is like a trend spotter, where we actually mine the data of Zalando and actually provide by cities. We can look on the app. You can actually sort by cities what are actually movers and shakers in terms of trends by cities. So, and I'm not sure if Oslo is well on there, but I think Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris is on the list, where we actually mine the data about what kind of items as well get searched more, like what kind of color trends you actually you see more by city, and it actually varies very much by city. It's not the same like in Berlin or in Paris or in Oslo. And very trend conscious consumers actually look at these trend spotter data quite a lot. But as well, brands are very, very interested in the data, and then we deploy to them towards their own kind of production and knowledge.
How different is the taste in the various cities? So let's say you mentioned Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris. How different are they?
If you're interested, like you can just look in the app, and you find like you can actually filter by different cities, and you just see like just last week what kind of items were trending in which city, and it looks totally different. Yeah.
Wow. And if you were to be a bit ahead of time, what would you buy just now? What color and what kind of clothes?
I think I'm pretty consistent. So it's not that I have a turtleneck all the time, but I'm very consistent. I'm very loyal to a couple of brands that I have, and in terms of colors, it's mostly in the gray, blue, and white and dark space.
Let's move on to the climate impact and the environment impact. Just how do you assess Zalando's role in the environmental impact?
The fashion industry has an impact on the environment, and as well, and it actually has to do better. So, and I see as well Zalando's role in that is kind of important, because we interact with more than 60 million consumers and with 7,000 brands. So it actually has a big impact, and we should use actually our role as well very wisely to drive impact for good. One urban myth that I just want to clarify is that sometimes I think e-commerce has the view that it is ceteris paribus actually not better than bricks and mortar, or like worse than bricks and mortar, which actually is not true, because in bricks and mortar you actually have all these stores that they have like in the inner cities. They have to have lighting, they have heating, they have these inner logistics towards providing merchandise in these stores, and all the consumers actually have to, drive there, park their car, go in there. So in e-commerce, you will have all that. Yeah. So you just have like you have logistics centers that can and are actually pretty efficient in terms of their impact. And then you just have to run the shipments, where there's a lot of levers that you can pull to actually make this neutral. So like for like, actually, e-commerce should actually have a much less impact than actual bricks and mortar. But though I think like in total, we're very committed to being climate neutral in our own operation and private labels by 2040. And as well in our larger scope by 2050. And on top of that, we as well try to find good mechanisms of how we can actually help the industry to do better. So for example, what we do is that we enable kind of more sustainable flags. Yeah? So when actually a brand invests into like a certain area of sustainability, so for example, like different usage of material, or different impacts, that we actually create. I mean, these labels that actually consumers can filter on. Yeah? So, and what we see is that this more sustainable filter labels. So when actually when consumers shop by them, that the return rate actually gets lower. So it is better for the consumer, it's better for the environment, but it's as well better for the brand, because return rates are always a big cost factor as well for brands. Like again, a flywheel of good win-win-wins, where actually the brands can actually invest towards more sustainable and actually as well has a good impact on consumers. And I think those kind of solutions that we can drive on this intersection between consumers and brands is something I'm very excited about, because it is really win-win-win situations we can actually drive very uniquely at Zalando.
Let's talk about leadership. So you run this from the first flip-flop to now you're like 15,000 people or thereabouts. How has your leadership style changed?
I mean, a lot, yeah, I guess. When I started out, I was 24. Like, I never really worked in another company outside of the social media company we started also in Latin America. So I never really had any work experience. So I think literally in the first years, it was about just being in the front row and just, doing playing on the field, yeah, and just doing stuff. But over time, obviously, we have grown a lot, and I had to as well learn about how to actually scale myself and how to scale the leadership. What I would describe now, how I would lead is, I'm quite an enabling leader, so I trust by default the teams or like the leaders that work for me directly, and I try to spend quite some time in just understanding and being curious about like what's happening, and then only really get involved in the areas where I feel that only I can do that. Yeah? So it could be some very ambiguous decisions, or like some more long-term decisions where you need a certain conviction and risk budget, or stubbornness as well. And I think on topics around culture, like corporate culture, like those kind of elements where you just have to really get involved and take a stance as no one else can do.
Is there such a thing as a German leadership?
I mean, Zalando is we employ people from 140 different countries, and we're a very European company. So I would although it's headquartered in Germany, but I would very much, I think, describe us as a European company.
I mean, you're quite soft-spoken. Are you an introvert?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if I would be an introvert, yes, but maybe yes.
And how does an introvert run a big company? What are the challenges?
I think actually Barack Obama is even like introvert. Yes, I mean, like, I do the stuff that I really care about, and I think it's about role modeling, about what's the right values for a company. Yeah? So, and I really deeply care about the company, and I think that's very visible in everything that I do. But I don't really have to take on the stage all the time. So I'm as well kind of like very happy as well to to provide the stage to people that actually deserve the stage, like when they actually have accomplishments. And I think that as well creates as well, I think, the right kind of team mentality at Zalando. So introvert or extrovert, I think there's always, I think, good mechanisms for good leadership.
Absolutely. I do suspect that you're more introvert than Barack Obama, to be honest, but hey.
Yeah. I don't know.
How do you communicate internally in the organization?
So we have a lot of different formats that we do. So we have, we have like an own intranet network where we do like, post letters. We have, we run all hands very frequently. And we test out as well a different kind of formats where people just ask us anything and we just react to what they have on their mind.
Now, what are the most important part of the Zalando culture that are non-negotiable for you, that you really work hard to retain?
So when we started out, like I really didn't really think that much about corporate culture because you just start to run. And then I realized when we grew that certain things happen in the company where you feel like you have not, where you kind of don't agree with, and you just ask yourself, how did it actually happen? Yeah. When we realized that at like 2010, when we grew like from 50 to 200,000 people, we started to codify these principles and then make them really count within the company. And these are like 14 leadership principles that we then hire by, that we promote by, that we quote a lot internally, that are very kind of visible. And these were like leadership principles that we say, like, these are things that really matter when you actually work, and it should actually feel kind of like very, very important. And people really can quote them, and people are using them. That provide like a north star of how we take decisions, how we run actually together as a team. One leadership principle that is important for us is for example, play as a team, dare to fail. Huh? As you need to nurture this willingness to take as well risk. Yeah. So otherwise, I think you really create like a culture where it's very easy to just discuss a problem, yeah, or why it actually should go wrong, because there's always so many good arguments why things actually should go wrong. And then if nobody really is willing to stay positive and they take the risk, then nothing will really happen. And if you actually create such a culture, then I think you basically create like a poker without blinds. Huh? So where, only people actually go on when it's very, very, very clear. If as a company you never really take on some calculated risk, I think you're very clear to, lose over time. And this is actually something that's very important to us, that we really encourage people as well to take a stance, take a risk, and then don't be the "I told you so" person. But when it actually doesn't go wrong, but really cheer them up when they actually take risk and go after an opportunity. So that's, for example, one that I personally care quite a lot about.
You listed on the stock exchange quite early, right?
Yeah.
Just after 6 years. Was that the right thing to do?
It was very, very early when we started around 2008, end of 2008. So we had as well like a different kind of environment that we actually started in. So there was not a vibrant VC scene. So there was different kind of investors that we could talk to. So like one of the biggest supporters and as well shareholders of Zalando was actually Kinnevik.
Yep.
And Kinnevik was like a public company. So, and after some time, because Zalando actually grew so big in a short amount of time, we became actually a very big part of the net asset value. So their kind of earnings calls, and Kinnevik is a public company, so the kind of their earnings calls their quarterly earnings calls became like our earnings calls, because we had to just provide a lot of transparency towards the Kinnevik shareholders, because it was such a big part of the assets. So, so we had like all these, downsides of a public company without really having the upside of a public company. So for us, it was a very natural step then in 2014 to go public, which was, only a couple of years after we found the company. So now I run for a much longer time now a public company and a private company.
You've been very vocal about kind of the European dream for entrepreneurship, and I'm very concerned about that. Just what are your thoughts about Europe as a place to start up businesses?
I think what I'm missing sometimes in the European debate is something like a positive North Star idea. Yeah. So because if you don't really have a positive North Star idea, you kind of get into a lot of detailed discussions and negative discussions. What really I think we need here in Europe is first of all a positive kind of idea. What is actually what we want to do, and I felt like that creating such a European dream is like a good and North Star idea, because I feel the American dream, which was like it's like a big brand of the US. I think it has suffered quite a bit in recent years, which is a brand around come to the US and we cheer you up and build your dream, and it's the right kind of inclusive place. And I feel the American dream has suffered because it went from a very inclusive idea now to a much more exclusive idea. Yeah? So not everyone is really welcome in the US. And I feel Europe really has a big chance to actually tap into this void and actually create like a European idea, because it's a free space. It's a very values-driven democratic space we have in Europe. We have all the great talents and we have a lot of potential, and we just need to, I think, formulate like a positive, like North Star idea, and make it as well clear that we're here in a race. We're in a race between China and US, and it's about relevancy, and we want to win this race. And that's some of the positive ideas I think that we need here in Europe.
So do you think that what's happening in the US now is making it more difficult to be a startup there?
I think at least like when you are a student that just graduates now from university, and you ask yourself, okay, where shall I actually start a business? I think there's certain elements in America that probably make it a little bit easier, but in Europe there is as well a good fundament. So there's access to people. It actually has a big single market that should actually enable us to actually really stay here. And I think in terms of values, that's one of the core questions that I have for myself is, what is the value space that you're actually most attached to? Because that's essentially you're choosing your home as well as for your company and as well for yourself. That's for me like what the European dream actually can become. But I mean, in order to make such a dream happen, first of all, I think what we need to do here in Europe is to really realize that I think those founders and these movers and shakers, they are really, they are your customers, because they can choose where they want to start their business. How do we really make sure that we make it easy for them to actually start a business, scale a business here in Europe? And how do we make sure that they have speed and can generate scale and really understand as well customers, and apply like a lens of competitiveness towards all the environment that we actually suggest to them through our regulation. So I think that's one. And the second one is, for me, one of the big arguments for Europe is the single market that we have, because it's actually a huge market. So it's it needs to be as well understood as a single market. So in terms of how merchandise and people and as well capital is used in the single market. So it's like a lot of fragmentation that goes beyond the natural fragmentation that we have in Europe. I think it's just not very helpful.
What would it take to make a single capital market?
I think you're probably a bit more an expert than I am, but I think just too much competition between the different nations doesn't really help that much.
No, I think we got 35 stock markets in Europe.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot.
I think it's quite a lot, yeah. But it certainly is not so helpful. Understanding that we are in this together and we win this together, I think is much more helpful. And then the third element I would really mention is, we talk a lot about a level playing field, but we need to even go beyond that. We need to make it easier for European companies that operate from Europe than actually outside of Europe. Yeah? And I think at the moment we don't do. Yeah? We sometimes even go after our European companies first because they're headquartered here in Europe and don't and make it easy actually for companies to operate outside of Europe.
Some personal reflections when you look back at your journey at Zalando. What are you the most proud of?
17 years now since I started this company, so I'm very proud that we actually built something very meaningful for Europe with a great team that I very much enjoy to work with. And I think when I think about the scale of more than 15% of the European population, and have done this as a consumer company, it's something I'm very, very proud of.
If you try to abstract what it is that makes a good founder, what is it? Who are successful?
What for me is trade as well, like active investors and many funds. The trait that I always look for is some element of curiosity and some element as well of humility. Yeah? So because that's what I realized over doing this for 17 years is curiosity is a very, very important leadership trait for me, because you can only really take good decisions when you listen, and when you are interested and you can learn actually from everyone. Yeah? So from a newly joined person to a company, from a customer, from a partner, you can literally learn from everyone. And this is well important that you're curious in order to actually take good decisions. And the second element of humility is as well for me important, because you need to be respectful for what is in front of you and not get ahead because just because whatever you built until here doesn't always predict that you as well being successful in the next kind of challenges that you have in front of you. And I think that's two kind of important traits that I would always look for founders when I invest into their companies.
How much do you work?
I don't really differentiate that much between like when I work and not work. I mean, I think about Zalando when I get up, when I'm at work, when I'm at home. When you're found, it's a very, very special kind of relationship that you have to the company, like a very deep care. And I mean, it doesn't really matter where you are, and I always think about it in a way. So it's very hard for me to say like what's work, what's not work.
Do you think that's a prerequisite for being a good CEO, that you are totally absorbed in the company?
I mean, you have to balance. You certainly have to manage your energy. I think that's important. But when you really love what you do, and when you're really passionate about what you do, and when you care, I think it as well gives you a lot of energy. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff that you do as a founder and CEO, like that not always gives you energy, but there needs to be always a certain balance that you actually, wake up every day. I think with a good amount of energy.
Yeah. Where do you get your energy from? And I know that you know specifically because you got one of these rings, right? So what is it that gives you? Where do you charge your batteries?
In a work context, whenever we discuss about, new innovation, new products, and imagining how this actually could be, I think that's always for me like very exciting products. And as well,
can you see that from the graph when you talk about new products? It's just like you can see it.
I probably would be able to see it. Yeah, I will probably be able to see it. Yeah, but that's something very exciting. Always like when you have an idea, when you have a plan, and then we execute on it, and you see it coming to life and working out. That's always the most rewarding experience in an entrepreneurial life.
Where do you relax?
Well, I relax when reading. I relax listening to podcasts. So that's the typical way of how I would relax. Huh?
What do you read?
I mean, it really depends. Sometimes I even read some criminal stories. So like the Scandinavian crime is actually something that I somewhat enjoy.
The Nordic noir.
The Nordics, yeah.
I could have guessed actually. Now, last question: what's your advice to young people?
Stay in Europe. Make it work in Europe. I think that's one wish I would rather say for young people when they actually start companies out.
Why should they stay in Europe?
For me, it's the part of the world that really deserves to actually gain in relevance again in terms of our value set and the way of what we represent. And I think it really depends as well with the value creation of companies in Europe. And it's all really on us to actually have this value creation here from within Europe. And I think that's as well, I think, a very big motivation of my co-CEO to prove that this is actually possible from Europe and put our energy to make it work here in Europe.
Well, that's a great piece of advice. You for sure have added more value in Europe than most people I've ever met. So big thank you for doing that and for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.